the Spirit Sessions podcast. I'm your guide, Katie Silcox, bringing you your weekly self-love soundbite. Join us, where I'll help you find your true spiritual home, where every single aspect of you is holy ground, holy ground, holy ground, holy ground.
This is a Spirit Session podcast with Katie Silcox. Venga chicos, empezamos.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Hi everyone, Katie here. This podcast is intended to inspire you, educate you, and most importantly, support you on your journey towards knowing who you really are, that inner self, that inner teacher. I am not a psychologist or a medical doctor and do not offer professional health or medical advice on this podcast. If you are suffering from any kind of psychological or medical issue, please do the right thing and seek help from your qualified health professional. Hey everyone, this week's podcast is brought to you by Beauty Balm from Banyan Botanicals. You know, I love Banyan and we use them all the time. They've been such a super support for the Shakti School, and their Beauty Balm is amazing. If you've got dry, dull skin or you just feel like it's never quite nourished, the Banyan Botanicals Beauty Balm is all about nourishment. Glow starts with how you nourish your skin, and this balm has deep, lasting moisture and care. It's made with nourishing ghee, clarified butter, shatavari, and a subtle rose geranium scent, creating a rich, soothing blend that helps soften the skin, support hydration, and promote that healthy, natural glow at any age. And I love how versatile it is. It's one balm, every dry spot. You can use it on your face, hands, lips, cuticles, elbows, knees, wherever, lady. Wherever your skin needs a little attention, Banyan Beauty Balm does it all. And the good thing is a little goes a long way. It leaves your skin feeling soft, supple, and genuinely cared for. I use this, you all. It really is so good. And I love everything from Banyan. I mean, honestly, they use high quality ingredients. They care about sustainability in the planet and deeply rooted in that ancient wisdom of Ayurveda. So if you're looking for one super simple product to support glowing, hydrated skin, try Banyan Botanicals Beauty Balm. You can find it at banyanbotanicals.com, and I'll link to it also in the show notes. Enjoy. Hey everyone, welcome to the show. We have a really cool topic today, but before we dive into it, I want to let you know this podcast is going out Wednesday. That's going to be today if you're listening to it the day we post it. And on Thursday, I'm teaching a special workshop on dopamine and a lot of the intersection between dopamine and Ayurveda that we kind of will talk about today. So if this is something that you're interested in, we have an amazing membership portal. It's called Spirit Sessions. It is super, super duper affordable. And if you can't come to the live workshop this Thursday because you're listening to this podcast later, you can join anytime. All the recordings are there for you. It's essentially my entire compendium of all the workshops and all the meditations I've ever given to the public in one place for a very affordable price. So I hope you'll check it out. So today we are talking about something really interesting, really cool. And it's a word that I learned a couple years ago. The word is limerence. And what is limerence? Limerence is when you become psychologically obsessed with someone else. And it can happen to anyone and everyone. It is nothing to be ashamed of. It's essentially the consciousness that many of us had when we were little, right? When we were 12, 13, 14-year-old little boys and girls, and we kind of lived in a fantasy world. It's very much a rescue me princess syndrome. It's a topic that millions of people are talking about right now. It's being Googled, and it is the feeling of something that feels like love, but it's not. It's called limerence. And it can happen when you're noticing that you're obsessed with someone that may not even know you, when you're obsessed with someone that you maybe met on a dating app or on Facebook, when you are obsessed with someone that you do know, but they are not really responding to you, right? They barely text you back, but you can't stop thinking about them. And it's really in the extreme form, which we'll talk about a little bit, but then we'll talk about how this is related to all of us. We're creating imaginary futures with people that you may have only met once or had 2 conversations with, or maybe you haven't met them at all. And one of the ways that we feel it is we feel it in our body, right? We feel it in our nervous system, and that makes the mind start to really spin. Today, we're going to talk about limerence through 3 different lenses: modern psychology and neuroscience, Ayurveda, and the wisdom of the subtle body, and the deeper spiritual teachings that teach us that, look, we're all doing some variation of this, and that is what? Let's start with the first one. The deeper teaching here about what happens when we're in a state of limerence is that we're actually coming from a place of being unbelievably uncomfortable with how we feel. That's where all of our imbalances, whether it's limerence or alcoholism or overeating or reactivity with our partners, it's coming from this place that I cannot hold and stand what's going on inside of me. And so I'm going to look outside of me for something that can make me feel better, that can make me feel okay with my life. There's a really great quote from one of my favorites, a man named Michael Singer. Some of you have probably heard about him. He wrote a book, an amazing book called The Untethered Soul. We'll link to it in the show notes. But he says the first step in working with these patterns of obsession or external validation with something like limerence is, the first step is to realize that you're always feeling like you're not okay. And you're looking for things outside of you in the outside world to be okay. But what you have to do is stop, and instead of looking to the outside, you ask the question, why am I not okay? Right? And so the root of all of this is the question, why am I not okay? Why? Limerence is one of the most misunderstood emotional experiences of our time, but we want to understand it here today because it's going to actually, if you're in limerence, or various subtle states of limerence, which I believe we're all in, it can be a really powerful doorway to freedom. So the term limerence was coined by a psychologist named Dorothy Tennov in the early 1970s. And she described limerence as an involuntary state, meaning it's compulsive. You don't have a lot of control over it. It's an intense, involuntary state of deeply intense romantic obsession. And it's characterized by intrusive thoughts, emotional dependency, longing for reciprocation with people that you may not even have a relationship with. There is a lot of idealization, fantasy, and hypervigilance. So in plain English, you get obsessed with somebody, they live rent-free in your head, as the kids say. If you are in a relationship with them, you might replay interactions with them constantly. For people that in modern days, you analyze texts, you create stories, you reread text over and over and over, you interpret any tiny signal as having a lot of meaning, either deeply positive or deeply negative, and you experience emotional highs and lows based on their attention, on whether they're paying attention to you or not. And here's like the most important thing, because we're all in relationships, right? And so you might be saying, wait, am I doing this? So here's the most important part. For it to be limerence, the intensity is not proportional to the actual relationship. So a lot of times, and we're talking about like the outer kind of world form of this, the technical definition is when you get kind of obsessed with a coworker that might be married. You start to fall in love with an acquaintance that does not correspond. You might obsessively think about your ex and stalk his Facebook and stalk his new girlfriend's or new wife's Facebook, right? Like you've got a crush on a teacher or a therapist. You might be obsessed with a particular celebrity and people that you haven't even gone out with. And that can feel really, really scary and confusing for people because in the body, it feels so real. So you may be like, wow, that's not something I would do, or I've never done that. But really, I want to talk about limerence today because it is the most extreme manifestation of the subtle stuff that I know I'm doing, and I'm sure you're doing all the time. It's an extreme form of something else that we do subtly with our relationships. And that is, it is the outside world's responsibility through this particular person that I've deemed very, very, very special to make me feel a certain type of way. That's where it starts. And so with limerence, the outer person doesn't even have to be real. And we can anchor into that external reality as a way of playing a trance-like obsessive compulsive game where we make that person the external locus of control for our experience of emotional goodness, of safety, of craving and desire and longing, or also the opposite of that, which is avoidance and fear and shame. Why I want to talk about limerence a little bit more is that I find it so fascinating because the ancient texts talked about this. In the Buddhist Tantric tradition, they talk about this as the hungry ghost. It's this energy that makes us seek outside external validation obsessively. And we can get a little morsel of food. We can even get a lot of food, and we try to put it in our body, and it never, ever, ever quenches our thirst or satiates our hunger. Because in the tradition, the hungry ghosts have these little teeny tiny necks and these big bellies. They're starving for more and more and more, but they can't ever get it down into their gullet, right? In other words, the real experience of love is never actually had because we are shadow dancing with ghosts. So why is everyone online talking about limerence right now? And I think it's because our modern technical culture, whether it be social media or AI or dating apps or, Facebook, messages, emailing, texting, it's setting up there's a whole chemistry around this that we're going to talk about in the workshop on Thursday on dopamine, but there's like this whole intermittent reinforcement that's creating attachments to things that don't actually feed us. It's the same energy behind a slot machine or a casino or like online gaming. The people that have created these social media apps, dating apps, even, media of the news, they have studied this very much, and they know how to hijack your nervous system. So the person who texts you back immediately, that's good. That's like what we would call like a normal, maybe not immediately, but there's a rhythm of connection with people that we actually know and are in relationship where there's a predictability to it. That's good, right? But someone who disappears for 3 days and then randomly sends you a heart emoji, whoa. The brain starts writing this whole novel about what it means. And so here is kind of the red herring if you're in like a limerence type of relationship. It is fed by what the young people call breadcrumbing. It's fed by unpredictability of communication expressions, right? So someone writes you one day and then you don't hear from them for a week, but then they send a message that you're not even sure what it really means. And so that sends you into a spiral of like, what could this mean, right? There's an internet joke about limerence that says, well, I'm not actually attracted to them. I'm attracted to their potential. And that really is the story of dopamine. Right? Dopamine is not really the chemical of pleasure. It's the chemical of anticipation. It's about seeking, pursuit, wanting, and rewards. And the brain releases dopamine most strongly when the rewards are uncertain. And they've actually done experiments on mice where they can measure the dopamine in the mice's brain. And so if the treats are coming in like a predictable way when they do A, B, and C, and D, and the treats will come, when that like maybe let's say they touch a bar and they get a treat. And every time they touch the bar, they'll get their treat. And then they change up the experiment. So they touch the bar, maybe it gives them a treat every 5th time, and then every 8th time, and then every 20th time. And so it sets the dopamine levels like super high because there's no guaranteed pattern and there's no stability in this. And that's why limerence can feel, initially more interesting to us than actual human, stable, loving, real relationships. Because it's that uncertainty of the casino that keeps our dopamine loops active. Our brain becomes super obsessed, compelled, and fascinated by things it can't quite understand. Now, you may be thinking, but Katie, I don't have a limerence relationship with somebody. But do you? Because here's the thing. Instagram is a limerence relationship. Facebook is a limerence relationship. The news media is a limerence relationship. Why? Because they know how to get us fascinated, obsessed, compelled, and guess what else? Scared. Another big part of limerence and these dopaminic cycles is that when things are predictable, the dopamine goes down. When things are unpredictable or unsafe, the dopamine goes up initially. But guess what happens? You need more and more and more weirdness, uncertainty, unpredictability to get the exact same amount of dopamine that you had before. And so the stimuli has to be ever more strange. Let me give you an example. I noticed, and I have plenty of problems and addictions, but let me tell you, scrolling Instagram and scrolling Facebook, thanks be to God, it's just not one of my problems. But I know it's a big deal for many of you, right? You like to kind of doom scroll and go into zombie mode. And I happened to look on my Instagram feed where it gives you Reels suggestions. And I could not believe what I was seeing because I hadn't turned off some of the controls that I went and changed. And it was just giving me all this slop, like AI slop, body dysmorphia, violence, weird stuff where it'd be like somebody with like a weird, appendage, just weird AI slop. And it looked gory. It was really gross. And what I realized is, oh my God. So, and then I started studying because that's what I do. And it was like, oh, Instagram is giving more and more weird things because then the brain goes, whoa, what was that? There's a whole thing around hypnotism. You may have heard of neuro-linguistic programming. If you want to hypnotize someone, here's what you do. You completely break the social matrix of what they are expecting the interaction to go forward in this sort of socially acceptable way. So there's a great, amazing psychological sort of hypnotist type guy named Darren Brown who explains how he does this hypnotic effect on people. And he'll just go up to someone in public and just say something to them totally random, like, hey, that wall was too big for me to get over. And he just says it to him. Now imagine if you're walking down the street and someone says to you, you think they might come up to you. If someone comes up to you at all, what would they say? Hey, do you have the time? Or, hey, we're lost. Do you have directions? It happens less now because of phones, but it used to happen in the past. That wouldn't break your brain, but it would still be kind of like out of the ordinary. Imagine this man comes up to you in the middle of the street and says, hey, the wall is much higher. I couldn't get over it like last time. Your brain would break. And all these chemicals start to go off in the body. And that's when you slip in the hypnotic moment. For a lot of people online, that can be on Instagram. What do they slip in? An ad. A perfectly timed advertisement. If you look at most news media sites, they do the same thing. Have you ever noticed, and it could be Google, it doesn't just have to be, the New York Times or Fox News, although I've seen them on Fox News quite a bit, so user beware. There'll be an advertisement for something really weird, but the photo underneath it will have nothing to do what they're seeming to advertise. Why? Click. That's the moment. That's the limerence. That's where you go into an altered state of consciousness. It's a hypnagogic realm. Hypnagogic. What a great word. You're in the fantasy realm. You're in the realm of seduction. You're in the realm of control. And we kind of like it. And that's where we can take ourselves on that journey, but we can also be taken on that journey by people who want to control us, whether it be through, having us buy the latest gadget online or to get into rage at a different political party. We are being manipulated, certainly, through this. And so anytime you're online and you start to become confused, fascinated, super interested, but confused, there's nothing wrong with being interested, but it's that element of what? Now you know you're in the realm of being hypnotized. And now you start to look for evidence, for signs, for certainty, because you've kind of been thrown off, but the certainty never really arises. And so what happens? Your attention just got captured, and our attention is super, super precious. So Ayurveda has been talking about this for thousands of years. Ayurveda has a concept called Kāma. Kāma can mean desire, but it's also beautiful. It's life, right? It's the way that we reach for experiences in life. It's the force that makes flowers bloom, the force that creates art, the force that allows a young baby to long to be a doctor or a fireman, right? It inspires poetry. It has encouraged many a young sailor to cross the 7 seas for his beloved, right? It's a force that does create intimacy, and without it, it's pleasure, right? Life would be very boring and very flat. There's nothing wrong with experiencing desire. It's a part of life. Just like there's nothing wrong with experiencing fear. It's a part of life. If there's a bad person, you need to run away. But with that being said, Ayurveda understands that so quickly our Kāma gets distorted, doesn't it? Desire becomes disconnected from its source, which is awareness, which is wisdom, which is our connection to God. And when our desires are not connected to God, they become grasping. And grasping can lead to obsession and addiction and compulsion and attachments that are unhealthy. And limerence. Limerence, writ large, is just living in a fantasy world. Living in a world you want to be in because this world sucks. It's not good enough. And raise your hand, podcast listener, beloved, if out there you have ever lived in your fantasy world. That's what limerence is. It's that there's something fundamentally wrong with my life, with me, with this moment right now. And I have to get out of it. I know this has been a big struggle for me, just truth being told, since my house burned down. I have had a limerence relationship with a dream home. I don't know where it is. I don't know what exactly it looks like. I can imagine certain parts of it and certain elements of it, but I get up every morning after my meditation. I'll look at, these apps that show you homes. And I hope you're feeling what I'm feeling, which is a lot of compassion for myself because, when you don't have a home, it's normal to look for one. But every house isn't the one, And how many of us have been on dating apps and nobody's the one? Or maybe we're married and the one we chose, we don't feel like it's the one. How many of you out there are married and you're in limerence with someone else? Maybe it's someone you saw at the gym, or maybe it's your doctor or your therapist or the neighbor. You're in that fantasy world. And what I started to notice, and why I got interested in this term and wanted to do this podcast, is that I started noticing that for me, that house search was creating suffering. Michael Singer, I've been reading a lot of his stuff lately, and he says that feeling of longing for what isn't here is actually creating pain in us. And it's not that we're not allowed to want a house or want a beloved or want anything. It's that anytime we are coming from our reactionary patterns from fear or our cravings from a desire that's coming from being uncomfortable with the way things are. In other words, when we're not coming from awareness, we don't actually create that life that we want anyways, because our reactivity is running our choices. And the way we can get out of that is that we can make choices from clarity. From clarity. How do we do that? We recognize when we're in fear and reactivity, and we recognize when we are in cravings that are coming from reactivity, and we pause that moment and we let ourselves feel, and we bring in the healing light of our attention and our awareness, and we get clarity on what we really want. The dosha really connected with limerence. They're all involved, but vata is really, really high. And vata loves possibility, imagination. Vata loves future projections. It loves fantasy. Vata loves an unfinished story because it loves the possible. And there's nothing wrong with that. You know, vata people are the most amazing creatives, right? Because they're so comfortable with the realm of fantasy. But that limerence really thrives in uncertainty. And the less you actually know about someone, the more room fantasy has to grow. So here's what's wild. You know, and I've told a couple of my students this lately. Sometimes it's more fun and more appealing to our chemistry to be in love with someone we don't really know well than to be actually with someone we do. In fact, for many of us, it's more pleasurable to keep people in the realm of that fantasy world because they give us a place to put our projections of all the ways that we long for love and desire and sexuality and sensuality. They are essentially a movie screen upon which our mind can project all of that unfulfilled longing. But they're not real. And one of my favorite definitions of enlightenment, it's to just be with reality as it is. And you can bring that to everything. You can bring it to your life everywhere, but especially to your relationships. I know I have been the type of young woman that suffered from varying levels of fantasy relationship. And now that I'm in a real one, it's like, oh, wow, like this is a real person. They have ups and downs. They have good days and bad days. And so am I. And being with a real person is, you know, cleaning up after their socks on the sofa. It's me leaving the light on in the bathroom. It's burping and belching. And it's, you know, diagnoses and death. It is laughter and tears. It is being super loving and conscious one day and a reactive person the next. It really is hard. To be in reality as it is to love things not as we want them to be in fantasy, but as they are. And that doesn't stimulate dopamine. It's not about the hottest chemistry of your life. It's about truth. So the fantasy trap. I'd love for all of us to just take a moment and think about like what ways I get lost in the fantasy. And I know for me, it's usually coming from being uncomfortable with something in my life as it is. I like to imagine a better house. I like to imagine a beach vacation where, you know, we're all happy and laughing. Our brain really is the best Hollywood studio, isn't it? It writes the screenwriting, it brings in the cast and production, it can make sequels and spinoffs, and we can really imagine our entire future lives with something that may not even exist. You know, the funny joke online about limerence is, oh, we've been married for 6 months in my head. And you may be like, but I don't do limerence in that way. Yeah, but what have you been doing in your head that is your realm of fantasy? Maybe it's the job, maybe it's the home, maybe it's the person. What is limerence really about? How can we use this, in other words, from a tantric perspective? How can we not make it bad? Because underneath every obsession and craving, there's actually energy. Underneath longing, there's this real beautiful place of connection. Underneath that desire and fantasy, there's this deep feeling of wanting belonging. Underneath all of that craving, there is energy, there is vitality and aliveness. When we dig deeper into the feeling behind the limerence, what we discover is that what we're actually craving and missing isn't the person. It's a feeling, of maybe love or possibility or hope or expansion. Or I know for me and many of the students I've worked with, it's wanting so desperately to be seen for who we really are, and that what is seen is good. To be seen and to be also have the ability to see someone else. That's the spiritual reframe. What if limerence isn't a sign that you've found the one, but a sign that you've actually forgotten a part of yourself? If you don't do limerence in the traditional sense of the word, what if the future craving is a sign that you have lost your way to your life and the sacred mandala that is your life right now? Always the answer is this: be here now. Learn to come back to this moment, to this breath, to this inhale, to this exhale, and to actually see what's there. And when you do that, what's going to happen initially is it's going to feel like shit. When we run away to our fantasy trances, we're actually running from something uncomfortable inside. So when you sit and meditate or pray, when you open your heart to this moment now, what you get to see first is all the crazy that you've been running from. Stop shaming yourself and just be with it. And the more you open to the feeling and you open to the moment, the digestive enzymes of your psyche will begin to work on it. And with time, clarity will come. You can't force it, but it will come. So I hope that you've enjoyed this podcast. I'm going to leave you with one last quote from a great Indian teaching. Man minus mind equals God. Sit, pause, stop believing your thoughts, let them pass, open to what is underneath them. Man minus mind equals God. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And again, if you're interested in more deep topics like this one, I hope you'll join us in our subscription program, Spirit Sessions. You can join anytime and get access to everything. You can start right now today with me. And you can cancel anytime. So you can join, hang out with us. It's $28 a month, super affordable. If you don't like it, you can always cancel. But we'd love to have you. All right, everyone. See you in our next podcast. A big special thanks to Kevin Carlisle of Goodbye Gemini, who wrote this beautiful podcast music, and to DJ Juan Pablo Jimenez in southern Spain for mixing it and making it magic.